Hi guys, it's Kelly here and I'm back with another video for Honeybee Stamps. And today I am using some new products from their 5th birthday release. Super excited. So the Buffalo Plaid, the Farm Fresh Flowers, Stamps and Dies, and then this because Stamps and Dies is actually an older product, but it totally suited my needs for this card. I was going through when I got the new release and immediately pulled out this Buffalo Plaid. I was like, yes, this is mine. You're for me. And so I knew I was going to use it on my card. I figured it would match perfectly with these farm flowers with like the little milk pitcher. There's also, well, there's a pitcher, there's a vase, and then there's like a little milk canister. It's adorable. I opted to do it a little bit softer. Originally, I thought I was going to do a black background, but I opted to go with this gray. This is, it's like a cool gray, charcoal gray. The ink I'm using is W+9, but you can use whatever works for you. One thing to note, in larger backgrounds, now I'm telling you this because you're going to see where my boo-boo is. See on that right-hand side where, yep, I just pointed it out there. It's because I had an air bubble in my background stamp. And this can happen with larger background stamps. You need to check for air bubbles before you start stamping. I did not, and that's why I have that boo-boo there. Once I got rid of that one, and you just peel up the stamp and put it back down to release the trapped air, I did not continue checking for more, and I should have, because there's another one. So don't do as I do as I say, so that way you don't have the same problem. At the end of the day, for me, because of the way that I designed the card, it wasn't going to matter, so I just pushed through it. I did end up having to stamp this 3 times, but it's because it was the first time that I used the stamp, so it was not seasoned. Meaning I didn't do anything to the stamp. This is just straight out of the packaging. And so usually the first 1 or 2 times you stamp one, it is a little bit difficult to get a good impression, but from here on out, it really shouldn't be an issue. I might maybe have to stamp it twice just to get even color. Large background stamps are hard to get an even background on just one go, unless you're using pigment ink. So here you can see now I have 2 spots, because I did not check for that second air bubble. So yeah, just make sure you're doing that so that way you're not disappointed with your backgrounds. And that's not just this background, it's any background. Also, something to note, I think I fixed it after this little subsection, but you can see that this part of the video is darker. Pretty sure with all of the stay-at-home schooling that we've been doing up in the craft room that Peanut is playing with the camera when he should not be. So I think that's what happened there, is he changed some of the settings. Like I said, I think I fixed it, but just so you're aware of why this is a little bit darker. I opted to do some no-line coloring because I thought that that would be really pretty, and that is also why I changed the background to gray instead of black, since I wouldn't have any black outline there. I used the Fade Out Ink on 3 ink for my no-line coloring. I did stamp them twice. I prefer stamping them twice, and that's how I have found that this ink works best for me. But again, you guys know how I roll. You do you, whatever works for you. And then this is the floral portion of the Farm Fresh Flowers. I wanted to do the picture as like a metal picture, like a farm metal picture. I didn't do like any rust or anything on it, but that would be a really cool effect as well. We'll talk a little bit about the coloring. This is a very long video, but don't worry, there's a very long story time to go with it. And this video is also part of a blog hop. Honeybee is has a 2-day celebration blog hop. They're doing giveaways. I think it's a $25 gift card. So make sure, if you have not seen the hop, if you're watching on YouTube, that you head over to the blog. That way you don't miss your chance to win out on that $25 gift card, because they really do have amazing products. Speaking of amazing, I have worked for Honeybee for years now, and I am very, very fortunate that my card making quote-unquote career has put me in a position where I don't have to work with anybody that I don't want to. I don't have to, like, I don't need to take it for the money or any of those things. I can pick and choose who I want to work with. And Honeybee is an exceptional company. They genuinely care about people. Melissa is the one who owns Honeybee Stamps. She is continually, the one set that she just created is going to Feeding America during this pandemic to help make sure that people are fed. She's done sets where she's donated to several different charities. She's a wonderful person to work with. Lisa is our design team coordinator, amongst all the other hats that she wears. She is fabulous and I adore her, and just the team in general is super supportive, and I'm very, very blessed to be a part of that. So I'm so excited that they've hit their 5-year birthday. I can't wait to celebrate so many more birthdays with them. And like I said, Blog Hop, make sure you want to check that out. Let's talk about the coloring before we get into story time, though you know we're going to go back and forth. You know that, right? So here, like I said, I wanted to do it as metal, so I picked my cool gray Copics, the C's. And as far as coloring anything that is metal, or to give it any sort of like shine, you don't want to overblend this. That's probably like key number one to getting, I guess, the look, the striation of the metal. You want to have those streaks. So you're going to be looking for super light pressure. When you're doing your flicking movements, your pen, or the tip of the marker, should barely be touching the surface of the paper. It should just be very, very light pressure. You don't want to be pushing down with a ton of pressure. You don't want to be going over the entirety of the surface. Like, notice here, I did not color this in. I left it white, and then I'm just adding the flicks of color over top of it. Again, this is just to create that texture, that that metal look. There's another way to do this, which is a little bit smoother, and maybe we'll do that on a different card. But for this one, to get that texture, this is what you want to do. You want those flicking lines, and when you're right up on top of it, it's gonna look a little bit crazy, but give yourself a little bit of time to look at it. Finish the whole thing, then stop and go back and look at it and see, or look at it from a distance. One of the other things, and you'll see that this is a learning process for me too, it always ends, that's why practicing is so important. I did not allow enough shadow in between these two sections. So I'm going to go back and make the top section a little bit darker, just so you can tell that there's a clear separation. You're not even going to see this portion in my finished card because my flowers will be on top of it. But if you're a person who is just, you're coloring this picture and you want to get some direction on that, I wanted to make sure I showed you the whole thing in case that is the part of the video that you are here for. So I'm going to go back in and add some more of that C7, just so you can really tell that there are two different sections. For the lines, the thin stripes, those I am going to do more smooth. So I'm just going to use a C1 and a C3 to separate those out. I did, when I did the middle section, I did not go all the way to a C7. I thought maybe I would make that section a little bit lighter and see how I liked it. I did not end up liking it. But so when I just went back in with a C7 and it turned out fine. So give yourself a little bit of grace to kind of play around with it. I do struggle with no line coloring and keeping all of the sections separate. Like, they get blobby for me, and so that's why I go section by section. There are some things I'm more comfortable with. Like in here, I'm looking at like a reference photo, which again is another tip. If you're not sure how to color something or how it should look, I just Googled like metal pictures, and that way I could look at them and see what it looks like in real life. Since I don't have a metal picture here I can look at, I just Googled them, and I do that for a lot of images. But do section by section, so that way you can always see where your lines are until you get more comfortable with no line coloring. And then really your highlights and your shadows are going to be so important for coloring with no lines. So that way there is that separation between this section and that section. The other thing that I struggle with here, and you can see it in the finished product, it is something that is still a struggle for me, something I need to practice, is creating clean edges. that is difficult for me. It might be hard to see on camera because like we're not right on top of it, but because the Copic markers, even with really light pressure, are bigger than, you know, a pen or a colored pencil, it is difficult for me to maintain really clean edges. So that's why you'll see sometimes when I'm doing it, I'm outlining it with a darker marker. I'm trying to give myself a buffer zone so that I don't go outside of those lines. That's why I'm so much more comfortable with black outline coloring. Because it gives me that little bit of buffer, and I know where to, you know, flick from. So yeah, that's it. Those are my tips on coloring the metal pictures. I did like the C7 much better. And now I'm going to go in and add that also to the handle. So I added it to the thin portion up top on the left, and then where it actually connects to the picture. Toward the end, I'm going to go back in and give those more of an outline as well. So the parts that are super shiny don't look like they're just disappearing. All of these same tips I used with the florals. You'll see when we're coloring there. There's just one other tip I think for there, and we'll talk about that when we get there. So if you follow me on Instagram or Facebook, then you know that recently I had made an announcement about a very large change in my life. And some of you are super cute and sent me messages and like, are you getting married? Is it this? Is it this? And so I apologize that it's taken me so long to get this video out. But once I tell you the story, you'll totally understand why it's taken me so long to get this video out. So we have to start back at the beginning, which is I was working, but Eric and I work for the same police department. I was doing, my actual title was case manager, but I was really just a clerk. No, I shouldn't say just a clerk, like it's a less than, that's not what I mean. But that was my job. Case manager was something that they called the full-time employees, but the clerks is what they call the part-timers, and they're one and the same, pretty much doing the same job. The only difference is I probably did more for the detective bureau than the part-timers did, and that's just because I was there full-time hours. So I took that job back in 2015. Here, I wanted to kind of tone down the striations. I felt like it didn't look supernatural. So I went in with just my C1 and went all over everything. This is the other tip that I have for you. So this is a very large bouquet of flowers, and sometimes that can be really overwhelming, and then add it in as a no line and forget about it. I'm already totally stressing about what goes where. When that happens, when I'm trying to color an image like this, I go in and I do what I call mapping. So I'm going in with my greens and I am mapping out where those leaves are so I can start to break up the picture in a way that is manageable for me. So that's what you're going to see me doing here. I did use 2 different green combinations for the leaves here, but that is my other tip that I wanted to just give you, is if you're coloring something that has a lot going on, just right in the beginning, start mapping out some colors so that way it breaks it up and is more like bite-sized, so it's not super overwhelming. Okay, back to the story. So in 2015, well, it was actually 2014, I was a dispatcher for the same city that I that Eric and I worked for. And they decided they were going to regionalize, which basically meant they were going to combine a bunch of cities into one dispatch center, and I lost my job. We had to test for the new city to see if they would offer us jobs. And I think I've told you a portion of this. So I did take the test there. I scored high, and then they offered me the job, but they weren't telling us what they were giving us. When that happened, I also took a test for the State Highway Patrol as dispatch. And I figured if I was going to try something new, I might as well just really try something new. And so I decided to not take the job at the regional dispatch center. I decided to take the job at the state. So I went to the state, actually before we regionalized, and I worked there for probably about 9 months. At the 9-month mark, my old chief called me and said, "Hey, we're going to keep 2 full-time positions here in the station for case management. Will you come back?" And so after talking to him, they were pretty much offering the same rate of pay as if there was no break in service. I would get to keep all of my vacation time. I wouldn't have to work holidays. And I could go back to my people, that I loved and was sad to leave. So I ended up taking that job. It gave me, more flexibility to spend time with Peanut, as he was super young at the time. I don't even think he was 1 yet. And, well, no, he had to have been 1. So I went back and I took that job. I never loved that job. That job was, this is the best job for my family, so I will do this. I loved the people there, and so that's what, basically made it manageable. But it was a true struggle for me because I did not feel helpful like I did when I was a dispatcher, and I could interact with residents in that way to offer them help, and also with the officers. So I did that job, and I was grateful for that job because I loved the people and because I loved my family. I always wanted to go back to dispatching. That was no secret. My chief now knew that I always wanted to go back. And over the last couple of months, I have interviewed at several places because I missed dispatching. I shouldn't say the last couple of months, because when I first went back and took the job, I then went to that regional center where I turned down the job. I went there part-time and dispatched. Then that environment was not positive. So then I left there and I dispatched for my hometown city, my home city. And I loved that. I loved them. But eventually their hours became something that I could not do because my ex-husband and I decided to get divorced. And with the divorce happening, I couldn't work night shift anymore. So I had to let that job go. Still missed dispatching. Then this new city had a regional center. They started at the same time as the other one. They were hiring. And so I interviewed there, and they offered me a part-time position, and I accepted that about 4 months ago. Then there's another one for the county that was a supervisor position. I interviewed for that. I was offered that position, and I ended up declining that position after talking to some people who worked there and some people who had worked with them, that the hours was just, it wasn't going to be conducive to me being able to actively raise my child. So Eric and I, when that job offer came through, Eric and I talked about it, and we decided that it wasn't going to be the best option. So kept my regular job and this new part-time dispatching job. That's pretty much what I've been doing for the last 4 months. Also, while we're talking about jobs, I quit the college. I quit the college not because I didn't love the teaching. I totally love the teaching. But because there's a lot of politics and nastiness in the administration, and it just got to the point where it was more trouble than it was worth. When they have new management, I would love to go back and teach again. I just don't know if that's ever going to be something I can do. So I'm down to 2 jobs, 1 part-time, 1 full-time. Then comes Corona 2020. And we already knew that the city that my full-time job was for did not have a lot of money. It's also the city Eric is employed for. And we are not union. So we're at-will employees. So first things first, they say there's no overtime. They cut all of the overtime. The following week, they came back with there's no extra hours for the part-timers, and they cut down the full-timers, which was me and my partner, down to 35 hours a week from the 40. So that's quite a bit of money a month for me. Then the following week, they laid off the part-timers. So at this point, this is a Tuesday, not last week, but the week before. And our chief had to fight to keep the full-timers. So here I am on Tuesday. I'm terrified that I'm not going to have a job at all. that they're just going to lay all of us off, which at least then I would get unemployment, but I was more concerned they would furlough us, or, cut our hours down to 20 hours a week. So now I can't collect unemployment, but I also, can't pay my bills. So it was all of this stress. I was worried. They also at that time, that they changed it, that they laid off all the part-timers. They changed our hours to Monday through Friday, which means I couldn't work weekends. Well, the childcare situation, we were only able to make it work because I had off days that were opposite of my ex-husband. So, and then Eric watched him during the day. So, I mean, Eric went from seeing him maybe 3 times a week because he works afternoon shift and Nathan would usually be in bed by the time he got home, to now Eric is pretty much his primary caregiver. He's with him well over 40 hours a week. But we were only able to make the schedule work because my ex-husband was off on Saturday, Sundays. I was off on Thursday, Fridays. And so really we just had Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday to worry about. Going back to the card. So I did the tulips. Here there is like a hyacinth in the background, and I love that. But trying to stick to all of those little tiny circles with no line coloring was impossible. So what I did was I opted to just do stippling in several different blue-violet colors so that it would give the appearance of that same flower without me having to color in every little single one of them. So that's a tip for that as well. So anyway, we were only able to make that work because of the staggered days off. Well, now they changed it to Monday through Friday. So here I am on Tuesday. I'm worried they're going to lay me off the next week. I'm worried that I'm going to have to take FMLA, which is the Family Medical Leave Act, in order to be able to do my childcare. I'm pretty much terrified that that's not going to work out. And things are funny. God is funny. So that was Tuesday. Wednesday, I had a part-time shift at the regional dispatch center where I had a part-time job at. I go into work. I'm there for maybe an hour. Our supervisor calls me into the office and he's like, "Hey, we're hiring full-time and we want to offer you the spot." And I was like, I would love to take the job, but here's my problem. I don't have childcare and I can't work 12 hours. And he's like, "Yeah, I know. I remember you telling me that. So here's what we're offering. What time does Eric have to go to work?" I said he has to go to work at 3. And they're like, "Okay, so you can either do the 12-hour shifts and come in at 2 a.m. and be done at 2 p.m. or you can work 8s. And then you can work 8 while you're in training, which would be, 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. And that way you're home and you always have childcare." And that's amazing that they would even make that offer because governments, union jobs, I mean, they're usually very unbending. I told him, I said, I genuinely appreciate you making the offer. Like, I don't want to be the new girl who's coming in super entitled and asking you, to bend the rules for me. And they're like, "We're not, you're not asking, we're offering. We think you're a really good fit here. And we would love to give you the first spot. We're hiring 4 people. That way you're, have the highest seniority." And, so I was like, okay, but I've been dispatching for 16 years. I'm not going to take as long to train as somebody else. So what, like I'm in training for 2 weeks and then I'm back to I don't have childcare problem. And they're like, "Well, your seniority is decided by your hire date, not the date you come out of training. So we would just agree to keep you in training until this whole thing resolves itself and you have childcare. Summer camps open back up, school opens back up, whatever it is." Which, I mean, is such a blessing. Like, I cannot even tell you the relief, just the sheer relief of knowing that, like, it's a good city, they're financially stable, the people there are super nice, obviously they're willing to work with me. So, here's the catch though. The catch is that in order to have the most seniority, you have to have the first hire date. And they like to start people at the first pay period. And I'm like, "Okay, so when's the first pay period?" And he's like, "Sunday." Now this is Wednesday. And I was like, "Well, I can't just leave without giving 2 weeks." And he's like, "I totally respect that. Right now you're working 4 hours for us and 8 hours for them. Could we flip-flop it? Where you work 8 hours here and then work 4 for them and maybe take 4 hours of vacation time or something?" And I was like, Possibly. That's a great idea. So I leave there. I go to my full-time job, and I call, my chief is not there. I call him. I tell him this is my situation, and he is so immensely supportive, which just goes to show you that, like, a lot, those being my people, those are my people for a reason. He's like, I think it's a good move for you. You've never been shy about saying that you wanted to go back to dispatch, and we'd love to keep you part-time. Once all of this is over, we'll talk about, you coming back here part-time. We're just on pause. And he's like, let me call because we had one of our part-timers, his name was Dave, had always said that he would take the full-time job if I ever decided to leave. And so he's like, let me see if they'll let me hire Dave. So he calls the mayor. The mayor says, yes, we'll let you hire Dave. So in a matter of 2 days, basically I quit my job that I had for 16 years, and Dave went from being laid off to having a full-time job. So it really did work out amazing. And then I was worried that I didn't have a start date at the regional center. So I was scared to death that I was going to have to go all this time without a paycheck. But then they ended up starting me that Monday. So really I just had like 2 days off in a week like I normally would. I was off Saturday, Sunday, and then I started the new job on Monday. So yeah, it's just been a huge blessing for us. And then, like, obviously, because Eric still works there, so like I still hear about what's happening at work. The following week, the people, my position is still there. Like, Dave and Kathy still have jobs, but they laid off several other people. They laid off several people from City Hall, several people from maintenance. And so I know it's just a matter of time, and I'm so grateful that I still have a job. So isn't that funny how things work out? Like, good looking out, Lord. Thank you. Back to the card. All the coloring's done. Here, like, I am running low. I don't know about you guys. Like, I'm a hoarder when it comes to craft supplies, no doubt. But the one thing I am running low on is black cardstock. And so I die cut my because out of it, and now I am trying to use that little teeny tiny space in between for my little label banner. And it did work. But you'll see as like the videos progress here, the creative ways I'm going to have to come up with to try and stretch my black cardstock, because I do not have a ton just lying in wait, and not everybody is shipping right now. So Honeybee still is, though, by the way. So here I'm just doing the usual, I treated it with my anti-static tool, stamped in Versamark, white embossing powder, cleaned up any extra embossing powder with my paintbrush, and then heat set it. Here's my putting together of the card. I have a problem with patterns. I love patterns. I think they're beautiful, but I don't like a lot of pattern, just a little pattern. So here I'm giving myself this white piece of cardstock so that the pattern is still there in the background, but it's not this, beautiful bouquet that has a lot going on top of a pattern paper that has a lot going on. So that's why I gave myself the buffer. I tried it without it. I did not personally love it, but it didn't look terrible. So if you are somebody who likes less clean and simple, that may be an option for you as well. I would just encourage you to kind of try it out. Here I die cut the because out of black, and then its shadow, which is also included in that die set, out of white. And then I glued those down together. I am going to pop up my picture and my flowers on foam tape, as well as my sentiments, once I figure out how to make it lay how I want it to lay. So yeah, that's pretty much, basically, that's why it's taken me so long to get this video up, is because, any videos done, is because I went from working afternoon shift and day shift, with lots of time off, honestly, because I had to be at home to watch, to be with Peanut on the days that Eric had to go to work. So really, like, just kind of jumped right in it with this brand new schedule. And I had told Peanut a long time ago, it was one of the things that we had talked about with card making. He felt like I maybe spent a little bit too much time in my craft room, And what he didn't understand was before, like, I needed it. Now our situation is a little bit different. But so we have come to an agreement that mommy doesn't do card making or editing or any of those things when when he's awake, basically. So I wait until he goes to bed, and then I knock out all the things I need to knock out if I'm not too tired. And that's pretty much what happened this week, is I was just too tired. Getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning 5 days in a row is so new for me. And I realize that it's not new, that's not a difficult thing for most people, but I am a night owl by nature. I do not love day shift. Days are too early for this girl. I am super grateful, that I have a job. So it is what it is, making it work over here. And then Eric still being a rock star, we found this, basically we're ships passing in the night. So he gets up with Peanut in the morning. I'm already at work. Oh, here on the, because I'm balancing it. They're going to be the same level, so I'm adding foam tape on the left and the right hand side, and then I'll just glue it in the center over that metal pitcher. But Eric he's amazing. So if like ever there was any doubt, which there wasn't, but if there was about like picking a partner in life, he has totally just stepped up and been super supportive and done all the things that I don't have time to do. So he's with Peanut during the day. I leave work at 2. I come home. We pretty much just kiss each other goodbye in the garage. He goes off to work. I come in, do the dinner, the bath time, the putting to bed, all of that. By the time that is done, I pretty much have maybe a half an hour to an hour by myself, and I just have not had the energy to do any sort of card making. So I have a couple of days off. I'm hoping to knock out a bunch of card making while I have some time off. That way I can edit those and kind of get them up sporadically now that I have more of a game plan. But so we will see how that goes. But pretty much on a whole, it's a total win. Very, very grateful for my situation. So after all that is done, I am going to still put glitter on my flowers. This is just a clear glitter pen. And then that's it. That's the whole card. So thank you guys if you made it this far. Thanks for sticking with me and listening to all of story time. And then again, head over to the blog hop so you don't miss your chance to win. I will catch you guys on the next video. Bye.